Every club likes a loan signing. Let's take a look at every Premier League club and their greatest ever loan signing. Arsenal, Julio Baptista. Julio Baptista was a strange one. When he arrived in 2006 on loan from Real Madrid, with Jose Antonio Reyes finally shutting up about getting out of the British cold, try living up north, Jose. Baptista didn't exactly set the world alight with 3 goals in 24 league games. He saved his best form for the Cups, mainly the League Cup, a competition so dignified that it has its name changed for anybody who wants to throw a few bob at it. The Brazilian only played 3 League Cup games as the Gunners reached the final, but netted 6, including 4 at Anfield and 2 at White Hart Lane. For that alone he makes this list, and definitely ahead of Kim Kallstrom. Bournemouth, Jermaine Defoe. The younger watchers might be shouting at their computer screens, Defoe signed a permanent contract with Bournemouth, are you mentally insane? The answer is yes, but that's besides the point. The 35-year-old actually signed for the Cherries at the turn of the millennium on loan from West Ham, netting 19 goals for them in what is now called League One. For an 18-year-old to hit 10 goals in 10 games, it was quite something. Brighton, Glenn Murray. I wonder if Bournemouth are now having second thoughts about chucking away Glenn Murray so readily, considering how on fire he's been since moving to Brighton. Initially signed on a season-long loan in July 2016, the man netted 15 goals in 28 games to earn himself a permanent move. Burnley, David Nugent. Poor old David Nugent. Ever since robbing Jermaine Defoe of an international goal from about 3 feet out, his career seemed to go a bit pear-shaped. He turned up at Portsmouth, and after about 4 training sessions, where I can only assume he displayed the ball control of a dead horse, he was nearly flogged to Derby County. Instead, he got a loan move to Burnley 2 years later, with the Clarets battling relegation. Alright, he didn't keep them up, but 6 goals in 30 league games, he at least proved a point to himself that he could score a goal or 2 in the top flight. Chelsea, George Weah. Who needs to bring in players on loan when you've got all the money in the world? Sorry Manish, you didn't quite make the cut, I wonder why. George Weah does though. Arriving in 2000 from AC Milan, he led up Stamford Bridge. Crystal Palace, Wilfried Zaha. I'm not sure why it didn't work out for Wilfried Zaha at Manchester United. It puzzled all of us, from the man on the street to David Moyes' daughter. For whatever reason, he was trucked back to Crystal Palace on 2 loan spells, earning himself a permanent move before too long. Everton, Mikel Arteta. When Thomas Gravesen left Everton in January 2005 for Real Madrid, I feel like I've mentioned that one a lot lately. Nobody knew what to expect when Mikel Arteta was brought in from Real Sociedad on loan as a replacement. But he did well, helping Everton to 4th. They really made the most of that Champions League qualification, didn't they? The Spaniard earned himself a permanent stay, made over 200 appearances and was voted Everton Player of the Season 2 years running. Huddersfield Town, Aaron Moy. Plucked from the obscurity of Man City last season, Lone Star Aaron Moy breathed life into Huddersfield Town, starring as they won promotion to the top flight. Leicester City, Yakubu. Yakubu is a man who has switched clubs 14 times in his career, so you could be forgiven if you'd forgotten about a 20-game loan spell at Leicester City. He may have looked like a 40-year-old man, but the guy was still relatively young back in 2011 at the age of 29. He spent 6 months in the Championship with the Foxes, managed by Sven-Göran Eriksson, who was hopefully leaving the secretary alone, and netted 11 goals, including a hat-trick against former club Middlesbrough. Liverpool, Nicolas Anelka. Another journeyman whose little black book of English clubs is probably larger than Brighton's trophy cabinet. This was only his second port of call on loan from PSG, and yeah, he's only netted 4 goals in his 6 months during the 01-02 season, but the Frenchman's pace terrified defenders, and Liverpool fans were screaming for their manager to sign him up. Instead, he signed El Hadj Diouf, you know, the guy more interested in spitting at little kids than scoring goals. Good call, Jared. Man City, Kiki Mustampa. Frank Lampard might feel slightly hard done by here. You know, if he was a subscriber, I've checked, he's not. But the transfer from New York actually wasn't a loan deal. I mean, it was a complete mess that enraged a bunch of Americans who'd bought season tickets on the back of his supposed arrival, but it wasn't a loan. Kiki Mustampa was, though, a player whose ball control would probably be laughed at Manchester these days, but back in 2005, the club couldn't be so picky. Clearly, I mean, Willow Flood was still getting a game. Mustampa arrived in January 2005 on loan from Atletico Madrid and scored 3 in 14 games, including a last-minute winner against Liverpool, back when beating the Reds was an actual surprise, before earning himself a second loan spell the following season. Man United, Carlos Tevez. Speaking of messy loan deals, I'm still not entirely sure who Manchester United were taking Carlos Tevez from, because I think we can all establish, and certainly Neil Warnock will, that it wasn't West Ham. Either way, the Argentine penned a 2-year loan deal at Old Trafford, netted 34 goals and won literally every trophy there was to win. Not a bad 2 years, and then of course he ruined it all by moving next door. Newcastle, LUKAKU. I know what you're thinking, I must be mad to leave out Seydou Doumbia, what a prolific finisher he was, eh? We'll go for LUKAKU though, who arrived on loan from QPR in 2013, just the 6 months after turning them down to move to a seemingly doomed Loftus Road for more money. To be expected from a man who'd cash in his career for 3 years on the Chelsea bench. Still, he scored 14 goals in 27 games for the Magpies. Southampton, TOBY Alderweireld. TOBY Alderweireld is one of the Premier League's best offenders. You would forget he spent time on loan at Southampton. I'm not sure what Atletico Madrid were thinking when they fobbed him off to St Mary's in 2014, but he excelled for the Saints before earning himself a move to a club with actual Champions League ambitions. Stoke City, Usama Assaidi. Usama Assaidi enjoyed 18 months on loan for Liverpool at Stoke City, signing in August 2013, and for the most part it went fairly well. He was a live wire and scored a few goals, but the highlight was surely the winning strike against Chelsea. Swansea City, Gylfi Sigurdsson. Gylfi Sigurdsson did end up at Swansea eventually, but prior to his stint at Tottenham, he spent 6 months on loan in South Wales and lit the place up. Signing from Hoffenheim in January 2012, he scored 7 goals and weighed in with multiple assists, was named the Premier League Player of the Month for March, before Spurs came in and stole him from under their noses. Tottenham, Mido. Speaking of Spurs, their best loan signing was probably Mido, a man whose career has deteriorated like a steak sandwich left out in the sun for 3 weeks. Arriving on loan from Roma in 2005, the Egyptian who once chucked a pair of scissors at Zlatan's head scored 15 goals in 40 games, and if it wasn't for a batch of dodgy lasagna, would have helped the club into the Champions League. He was rewarded with a permanent move, but by then he'd already fell in love with the fast food industry and only scored one more league goal. Watford, Matai Vidra. Signed on loan from Udinese in 2012, Matai Vidra netted 20 goals as the club almost won promotion before returning on loan 2 years later to knock home 16, where the club did win promotion. West Brom, ROMELU LUKAKU. ROMELU LUKAKU might feel unlucky not to make the list for Everton, so we'll put him in for West Brom. The Belgian scored 17 goals for the Baggies, including a hat-trick against his current employers, which probably had Sir Alex Ferguson trying his hardest not to throttle his defenders in the middle of his farewell party. West Ham, Alex Song. Signing Alex Song on loan from Barcelona in 2014 was certainly a coup for West Ham, and he performed brilliantly in his first loan spell. His second one, not so much. There's a reason he's now at Rubin Kazan, let's not forget. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.